For the past year, I have been making games, and today I want to share with you all what I learned making those games because I used to suck at making games. I was so bad. This was my first game. My first game a little over a year ago, back in September of 2022, was a Pong remake, but based around 9/11. But since then, I've learned a lot as a game developer, and then I started making games that look like this. 3D games that I honestly, I don't know how they fully work. I just copy and pasted a lot of stuff, but I was able to make stuff like that. And today I want to tell you all how I got to that point. So to start off, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I did know some game development. And before you click off the video like, this guy's a fucking fraud. This guy's a fraud, he's a liar, he's a loser. I may be all of those things. But the truth is that about 10 years ago, when I was 16 years old, I started learning some game development. And at the time, I was making really shitty mobile games. I was trying to create the next Flappy Bird. Spoiler alert, I didn't, because I am here in front of the worst green screen. I don't even know if this is gonna key out properly. It's probably not. It's gonna look like fucking dog shit. I didn't make the next Flappy Bird. I made the next piece of dog shit. So from about like 17 to 18 years old, I was learning Unity and I made some really shitty mobile games that got like no downloads, no one enjoyed them. And then eventually I quit game development and I was like, you know what? I want a more stable career. Let me become a YouTuber. I want to become a YouTuber, much more stable. And honestly, just because it was more fun. Because at the time, as I was making mobile games and trying to make the next big one-tap app, whatever, I didn't enjoy it. I started to realize, okay, maybe I just hate game development because I hate making these mobile games. Like, they're kind of fun, but they're not really like anything of substance. So because I didn't enjoy making mobile games, I just assumed I wouldn't enjoy making any games at all. So that was 8 years ago that I quit. And now fast forward 8 years later, I was sitting down on YouTube and a video got recommended to me by a creator named Polymars. The video was him recreating Super Mario Bros, but it was like not good. It was like him making it from memory and the game sucked. It was like buggy, you know, all that stuff. Not to talk shit about Polymars. If you're watching this video, Mars, I'm not talking shit about you. You know what I'm saying. Anyway, so I watched that video and after watching that, it invigorated a spark within me. I was like, you know what? I could make that. I could do that. I can make shitty games that are entertaining for a video, for the comedy and entertainment value of how bad they are. So that began my journey where I started making games again. And I had an idea. I said, I want to make 9/11 themed Pong. And I was going around telling all my friends, I was like, hey, I'm going to start making games. I'm going to make 9/11 Pong. And everyone was like, that's a great idea. Oh my God, we need 9/11 Pong. It's missing in the market. So I dusted off Unity, booted that shit up for the first time in years, 8 years. And I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I didn't want to relearn everything. So what I did was I watched a tutorial from some guy and he taught me how to make Pong and I just copy and pasted and copied everything. And then I added some assets that I drew over it. And that was my first game, my first game back in business. I was making games again. I was now a game developer, indie game developer once again. And the only reason I was making games again was because I was making videos about them. I'm gonna be completely honest. If I wasn't making videos about games, I don't think I would have started making games again at all. Because half of the fun was like, oh, I'm gonna be able to make a funny video out of this. So that's one tip I wanna give you guys. If you wanna get into game development, find a reason to do it. It doesn't have to be about making money. It could just be you wanna make some shitty game that'll be funny for people to watch. It's not like I'm making a devlog about a game that I'm going to release like 3 years from now that people are going to spend $15 on. You can play the games. They're all on my itch, but they're free. I'm not making any money off the games. I'm making like 50 cents off the video. It wasn't for the money. It was purely for the entertainment value of it, to make something fun. So I started to realize, you know what? Game dev doesn't have to be a get-rich-quick thing, as I thought with mobile games. It could 100% be just as a hobby, as something fun to do. So with that thought process in mind of making games for fun and not for profit, I started making a bunch more games. So the game right after that was Mr. Beast killing his fans, and I was having a lot of fun making these really shitty games that had a lot of bugs, but I didn't care because it was funny and it was for the meme. Now, as time progressed, I made many more meme games, and that was like my whole shtick. I made a JFK game, I made a game about Jeff Wittick's accident, and I was just enjoying making these shitpost games. But I wanted to learn more, and what I wanted to learn was 3D, because 3D scared me at the time. And I made a couple videos at first, like kind of trying to learn 3D. Where, like, you know those videos that are like, oh, I remade whatever game in an hour, in 24 hours, whatever. It was kind of a parody of that. So I remade Choo Choo Charles, tutorials and the new Sonic game in an hour. But the joke was that I didn't remake it. I made fucking garbage. This was awful. It wasn't even a game. It was just a shit post. And people got mad by it. Some people were mad, but it's a joke. All right, you're dumb if you got mad by it. Anyway, so that was me dipping my toes into 3D for the first time. And 3D was scary because I didn't know what I was doing. Once you introduce that third axis, I don't know what the fuck is going on anymore. You know, it's scary, especially when I would have opened up Blender. I'd be like, what is this? It's like I'm controlling a fucking airplane. I don't know anything about Blender. Even though I watched a bunch of tutorials, I still was terrified of trying to make something until I discovered Blockbench. Blockbench is like an open source, mainly used for like Minecraft mods, 3D modeling software. And I found out about that software and I was like, you know what? I think this is something I can figure out on my own. I mean, I watched a tutorial, but still, there's really not that many tutorials on Blockbench. So I started messing around with it, especially because I like the low poly style anyway. I really like graphics like that. And eventually I started to learn how to 3D model and I learned how to import those assets. And then when it came to creating the code, I honestly, to this day, like if you just sat me in front of the computer and you're like, all right, write out a fucking first person controller, I don't know. I have no idea how to do that. And that's fine. I don't need to, which I mean, I definitely should understand how they work. But for my case, as making fucking shitpost games, I really don't need to. So I would just use other people's templates and then just change things around and then add in code that I knew how that stuff worked, like interacting with things, stuff like that. So eventually I started learning slowly how to make 3D games of my own. And what I enjoyed doing was making Doom clones because I love the original Dooms, Doom 1 and 2 and Doom 64, not Doom 3 though, that's 3D. Fuck that shit, all right? Every 3D Doom can go fuck itself. I need to turn only left and right. If I'm able to turn up and down, I'm going to kill someone. So I made really shitty Doom clones. The first one was Charlie killing other Charlies, this dumb joke. Then I decided to make another 9/11 game, but this time it's Mark Wahlberg stopping the terrorists, and that was a really fun game to make. Then I made DMV Simulator, where you really do nothing. You just play cookie clicker, and you walk around the DMV, and your number is never called. And so with those projects, I started to learn 3D a lot more, and eventually I made my magnum opus 3D game, which was this Joel Haver RPG-inspired game where you kill rats. It's kind of like Call of Duty Zombies. They're just rats spawning, and you have to go up to them and kill them, and then the waves go on. Like, there's more rounds. You got to kill more. Very simple game, but it was a lot of fun to make. Very buggy. There's a lot wrong with the game, but I didn't really care that it was buggy because I finally made like a proper 3D game that people could play and enjoy. Actually, my favorite game to make was the EDP one. That was so much fun to make because I got to finally use like the 3D level editor. And that was the first time where I felt like making the game was like playing a game. It was so much fun to make, and I really want to make another game just like that. And so that was my journey, making these shitpost games. But eventually I got kind of bored of it. I got bored of making games that rely entirely on the entertainment value of them being a shitpost. And they were great at first, like to make games, to finally learn game development. They were a great motivator for that. But eventually I made my last one, which was the Tiananmen Square video. There really wasn't a game in that. It was me just talking about how I couldn't think of any game ideas. And I was like, I want to start making like a proper game with a story, because none of these games had stories. They're all just like, you know, endless runners, endless whatever type games that were based on someone else. But I wanted to start making like my own characters, my own story, my own environments that aren't based on like an existing IP. And so a year after I started, I kind of stopped making game dev videos because the games I want to make are very story driven games. Those are my favorite types of games, like Firewatch or like the Stanley Parable. Like walking simulator games where the whole point is the story, and there's not like, you're not fighting dragons and shit, you're just enjoying a story, and there's still gameplay like to it, but the story is what drives it. And I feel like I can't really make videos about that because it ruins the story. It'll just spoil it. You can't really make a devlog about the Stanley Parable because then you just give shit away that the audience shouldn't know about beforehand. And that's why I'm making this video, because I started to realize I can't really make videos about the games I'm creating, but I am still making games. Since my last game dev video, I've made 2 games. The first one is called Go to Work, which is a very simple, like text-based choose your own adventure game. It's very short. There's about 11 endings, I believe. I don't fully remember. And I loved making that game. And I know it's not everyone's cup of tea because it's just like a text-based game. Like, you're not inputting text, but you're choosing options, and I don't really want to spoil much, but I really enjoyed making that game and I really like it a lot. But I knew that's not a type of game that everyone really likes playing. People want to see graphics, they want to move around, they want to do stuff like that. So then I spent about a month making my favorite game yet, which is The Adventures of Bman. The Adventures of Bman is about a superhero who is the worst superhero in the world. He has pretty much no powers, but he was bit by a bee and now he's Bman. And it's a very linear story-based game. It's very short, it's about 5 minutes, and I would really love if you guys would play it. And one of the big reasons why I made that game is because I kind of want to get into the game industry, not as like a programmer, but as like a narrative designer. I feel like that would be my dream job, being a narrative designer, a writer, a level designer, a game designer. I would really love to be part of that process on a much larger scale. But I mean, there's like the worst time in history to get into the game industry. You know, there's a lot of layoffs. It's pretty bad right now, and I'm very sorry to anyone who has lost their job, but I would really love to get a job like that. And one place I would love to work at is Squanch Games, because they're like one of the few companies, at least that I'm aware of, that are making humor-based games with actually like good mechanics as well. Because I feel like what most companies do is they make like a really good game and they add some humor to it, or they make a really funny game, but there's really like no other gameplay to that game. It relies fully on the humor of it for the entertainment value. And I feel like Squanch Games is a company that's doing that really well. But I've applied to Squanch Games. I don't think I'm gonna hear back from them. Although I feel like, you know, my Mark Wahlberg game isn't too far off from High on Life. They're both great FPS games. But yeah, I've been rambling for a while now, and I've kind of lost my train of thought. So basically, to summarize everything, what I've learned from a year of making games is that you should make games because it's fun to do and not because there's a monetary incentive to it. Make games because you love making games, and that should be applied to like any art, to be honest. Make things because you enjoy making them, not because later down the line you're expecting to make a ton of money. Just make stuff because you can. You're allowed to make games, okay? I don't care if people tell you that, oh, your game sucks, it doesn't have this or that. It doesn't matter. You can make a game, you can put it out there, people can play it. It doesn't matter if it's buggy, it doesn't matter if you're not a good artist or if you're not a good programmer. You're allowed to make shitty games that people can play. And I feel like my itch.io is proof of that, because a lot of games aren't the best, but they're games. And I don't care if people say they're not games, they're games at the end of the day. So if you've always thought about making games, I hope, you know, maybe you can take something away from this. Maybe you can start making game dev videos where you make your own version of Pong that is probably offensive. Just make stuff. Just go out there, make something, just enjoy creating. That is all. That's what I'm gonna leave you all with. I'm gonna let the patrons roll, and that's this video. I've been recording for a very long time. I'm looking at the time right now that I've been recording for. I'm gonna have to do a lot of editing. This was very rambly, and I don't know if it's all coherent. I think it might not be. If you haven't played Bman, please check it out. Please play that game. Please leave a comment. Please just fucking play that game. Please play Bman. It's free. Bman is free and short. It's 5 minutes long. Just play it. Okay, bye.